Welcome to the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Ferguson, and I am your host. I am an active real estate investor. I flip 15 to 30 houses a year. I've got residential and commercial rental properties. I'm an agent with 9 people on my real estate team who've sold thousands of houses over the years. And I talk about what's going on in my career, as well as interview other amazing agents, investors, landlords, flippers, wholesalers, and companies who can help those people succeed. So I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsor, Patch of Land. They funded a flip for me in 6 days. I emailed them on a Sunday afternoon. They responded in less than 15 minutes. They have rates below 8%, work in 45 states, will fund 85% of a deal, and fund the repairs as well. Great company who I love working with, Patch of Land. And for my podcast listeners, I have a special discount page for my products, InvestFourMore.com/discount. That's InvestFourMore.com/discount. We've got coupons on all my coaching programs. Some of those programs involve calls with me, consulting, video training, and much, much more. All right, let's get to the show. Hey, it's Mark, and welcome to another show. Today, I have an awesome guest on, Jordan Goodman, who is also known as the Money Answers Man. Jordan has been in the journalism industry, the money industry for many years. He actually started his own newspaper at one point, spent 18 years with Money Magazine. He's been on all the major television networks, done tons of radio shows, all talking about money and becoming financially wise. So I'm super excited to have Jordan on the show, talk to him, and I'm sure he can teach my listeners something and probably myself as well. Jordan, thank you so much for being on the show.
Great to be with you, Mark. I hope I can really serve the listeners.
Nope, I'm sure you can. One thing I always like to start with is just get some background from my guests on where they came from. And I know you're not technically in the real estate industry, but you do a lot of real estate stuff. How did you get started becoming an expert on money?
Goes all the way back to age 12, if you really want to go back. I used to live on Cape Cod in Hyannis in the summers, and I started writing for the local newspaper, the Cape Cod Times, at age 12 about baseball. Kind of got interested in journalism, went all the way through there, went to Amherst College, London School of Economics, Columbia School of Journalism, started my own financial newspaper, as you mentioned, then went to Money Magazine. So you learn a lot of these things in the job, but I've just always been interested in helping people in all aspects of their personal finances. And I've got a lot of specific strategies in real estate that I think are really going to help people, your listeners, do even better. And I've got a lot of these resources at my website, moneyanswers.com, and I'm glad to take emails from your listeners as well.
Very cool. Yeah, and we'll have show notes. They'll give links to your website, and I know you even give out a phone number. And then, yeah, we can list your email too. So, right. I mean, looking at today's society, maybe we'll start there. What are some of the biggest problems or issues you see with people and money?
One of the biggest problems is earning a decent yield on your money. I mean, if you keep your money in the bank, CDs, money market funds, savings accounts, you're pretty much going to get zero. It's just outrageous. I mean, in the last year or so, the Fed Reserve has raised rates 3 times, the Fed funds rate that they control, which means the prime rate, which is what the banks charge, has gone up 3 times. So what the banks are charging has gone up for credit cards, student loans, car loans, mortgages, all kinds of loans. So what they're charging has gone up, but what they're paying on deposits has not gone up, okay? So the bank's profit margins have widened dramatically. Bank stocks have gone up because of that. But the poor saver depositor is like stuck out in the cold, earning nothing, basically. And I think it's going to continue. I think you'll see another 3, if not more, interest rate increases by the Fed Reserve in 2018. And that is, again, going to raise what people pay on loans. But I do not think, for the most part, banks are going to pass that through to depositors. So that's the problem, is having your safe money sitting there earning pretty much nothing. So here's my solution for that. I do what are called secured real estate funds, which is a way of earning 8% off of very good strategy with real estate. You get monthly checks, if you like, electronically on the first of the month, or if you don't need the money now, reinvest it and have your money compounding at 8%. And basically what these guys are doing is making short-term, like 1 year, commercial real estate loans for projects that improve the value of all kinds of real estate. Could be assisted living, could be apartment buildings, could be parking lots, could be student housing, all kinds of different things. And the maximum that they lend is 70% of the improved value of the property. So there's a kind of a cushion there. The builder developers got a lot of skin in the game. And people have been doing this for a long, long time, very, very successfully. And there's a way of getting 8%. And actually, when the buildings which are developed are sold, they share some of the profits back with the fund shareholders. So they might get another 1 or 2 points in profit sharing on top of that on a quarterly basis once the projects are sold. There's a website where people can find out about it, Mark, which is securedrealestatefunds.com. And there's also a phone number, 888-444-2102. Minimum investment's $5,000. Minimum hold 1 year. So they're not going to have access to your money for a year, but after that, you can get it whenever you like. So there's a solution. Instead of having your CD, 1 year CD at 0.01%, here's a way of getting 8%. And because of all these things I just mentioned, it's really quite secure.
Yeah, I mean, being in the real estate industry now, I don't even consider a CD or a money market an investment. I think you're losing, after inflation, you're losing money. Right. So it doesn't even make sense. With these secured real estate funds, are they similar to a REIT? How are they set up?
Not really. I mean, REITs are publicly traded, so they go up and down in value. And there are mortgage REITs and there are equity REITs. But even the mortgage REITs trade with real estate. So if interest rates go up, as they have been recently, mortgage REITs are going to go down a lot more than they're paying you in dividends. Secured real estate funds do not trade. They're not designed to go up and down. So your principal is basically unchanged, but you're getting an 8% yield. I mean, there are mortgage REITs with yields about 8 or 9%, but the value of them, I think, will fall pretty significantly if interest rates keep rising here. So that's one of the big differences in it. And, 1 year minimum hold, but after that, typically people will hold on to it for as long as 10 years. So it's similar but different. There are not a lot of REITs that do what we talked about, this kind of short-term lending. They might do long-term mortgages, but not short-term kind of bridge financing to help construction projects completed.
Right. It does sound a little bit like some crowdfunding companies that are in the real estate space now. Is it more similar to those?
Correct. And actually, specifically, the crowdfunding law, which was called the Jobs Act of 2012, authorized what are called Regulation A-plus funds. And that's what these secured real estate funds are, Reg A-plus funds, they call them for short. And that allows the average individual to get into things, in this case for $5,000, that in the past, only like pension funds or somebody with $100 million were able to get into, something like that. So yes, this was specifically authorized by, in effect, the crowdfunding legislation. It was passed in 2012. It took the SEC till about 2016 to come up with the regulations to do it. So these funds have come out since that time, so in the last 2 years or so. So yeah, it's allowing the average person to participate in things which in the past just wouldn't have been possible.
In my experience with real estate, I think so many people are missing out. A lot of people on my side already know this who listen to me, but the rates of return you can get in real estate being the actual investor are just, can be through the roof if you do it right. There's also some risk. But then as well with some of these crowdfunding sites and different investments, being a private investor, not even doing the work, there's just some really great returns as well that I think so many people miss out on.
It's passive. I mean, what you're doing is active as far as flipping properties, which is great, but that's not for everybody. Some people just want to invest in something and have other people do the work and have the expertise. These funds have a specific strategy, which is what they call collaborative lending, meaning they're almost like a partner to the builder developer. They're kind of working together to get the project done. As opposed to a bank, you don't think of them as collaborative at all. You think of them as the opposition, basically. They're giving people a really, really hard time getting commercial mortgages, even long-term ones, never mind short-term construction ones. And that's why these builder developers are willing to go to these secured real estate funds, because it's faster, it's easier, and they're like a partner. I think of it that way. And as a result of that, the builder developers are willing to give up a piece of their profits to the fund shareholders, which is kind of highly unusual. You're never going to see that from a bank. I'll just give you, it might help, Mark. I'll just give you an example of a project they did recently. Would that be helpful?
Yes, yeah.
So, for example, there was a guy in Boulder, Colorado, big college town, who had a big house he'd been renting out to two students for many, many years. He took a loan from the fund. It took him about a year, but he completely rejiggered the house to make it into 4 apartments instead of 2. 4 bathrooms, 4 kitchens, 4 doors. So now a year later, he's got the same house with double the income that he had from before. So his cash flow doubled. The value of the house went up 50 to 70%. So he was glad to pay this fund maybe 10% for a year, and he couldn't get a loan from a local bank. So you see what I mean by collaborative lending? They were kind of his partner in making this thing happen. And they also do what they call forced appreciation. Before that project ever happened, they knew in advance that if he doubled the number of units, exactly what would happen is the cash flow, what his values would be. It was based on the value they were adding to the property, not Boulder real estate going up in general, you see. So that's right. The strategy they use, and that's why it's a success. It's really win-win-win all the way around. And you're participating in that in a passive way by being an investor in this thing. And again, if that helps anybody, their website, securedrealestatefunds.com or 888-444-2102.
I was thinking, one of the problems in the country right now, at least in my area and many other areas, is a lack of new housing inventory.
Right.
And are they using these funds for new construction projects as far as single-family homes at all?
Yeah, it's about half renovation of existing properties and half new construction. Could be apartment buildings, could be single-family homes, could be offices, could be medical buildings, assisted living. There's all kinds of different things they do. And what these funds do is they're widely diversified by type, all the different types I just mentioned, and they're widely diversified by geography. So it might be in 30 different states, something like that. So that's another kind of a security feature of it, is that you're widely diversified by type and geography.
Right. No, that's very interesting. I know the crowdfunding sites that I've looked at, and I've had some of them on my podcast as well. It sounds like a pretty sound investment. Now, I guess I would ask, are there risks involved with those projects failing? What happens?
Yes.
It sounds like a pretty large fund, but what would happen then?
Not guaranteed. I do not use the word guarantee. That's an FDIC term. So yes, projects can go sideways. People behind these funds have done these for like 30 years, and they know how to deal with things when they go sideways. But one of the advantage of having a fund is you have many different projects in there. So if one or two of them go sideways, it's not really going to affect the overall one in any significant kind of way. When you do a crowdfunding where you're doing a specific project, you've got all your money in one basket there, and something goes sideways, and that can be a problem. So that's one of the things I like about the diversification by, again, type, geography, and many different projects means if one or two of them runs into trouble, it's not really going to impact you of any significance.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense, because that is how most of the other sites operate, is kind of a single project, single user. And if they go down, they have, things built in place to try and, lessen the risk, but there's still probably going to be some problems.
Sure. Real estate is not perfect. Things go wrong. Builder developers have great intentions and always follow through. One of the things I know these real estate funds do, for example, is they give the money out in stages. They don't just give them the money all up front. Maybe 10% stages. You have to get this amount of renovation done. We inspect it, and if it's done correctly, then we'll give you the next 10%. That kind of thing. So they've got all kinds of built-in kind of safeguards so that people can't run off with the money, or they know exactly what's happening all the time to make sure it's going well.
Right. Nope, that makes sense. And that is, I think kind of a safer way of doing it than the typical one single project. Now, I know you're doing some other cool stuff and have some other cool ideas as far as real estate goes. One thing that I know I figured out, well, sort of a little bit the other day on YouTube, I keep seeing these advertising popping up for, using a HELOC to pay off your mortgage. Right. I watched it. I kind of got the gist of it. Can you talk more about that and that concept?
So this is the strategy of what's called mortgage equity optimization. And if you do it right, literally, you can pay off a 30-year mortgage in about 5 to 7 years, depending on how the numbers work out. And now, this could be for your primary residence, or it can be for investment properties, as a lot of your listeners would have. So it can work either way. So let me just give you a simple example of how this works. The traditional system is you take, say, a 30-year mortgage, and you make the same payment for 30 years. All the interest is front-end loaded, right? The first 10 to 15 years, making very, very little progress in the principal, paying an awful lot of interest. And then if you refinance to get a lower rate and a lower payment, you just started a new 30-year clock all over again and basically threw out tens of thousands of dollars of interest you paid on the first mortgage. And meanwhile, you're keeping your money in a checking account earning zero, right? That's the existing system that works so well for the banks. You give them money for free, you pay them tons of interest upfront for many, many years. Okay? We agree on that's the current system, right?
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to reverse the tables. And instead of making your money work for the bank, we're going to make your money work for you. So that's mortgage equity optimization. And by the way, I wrote a chapter in my book called Master Your Debt about this, called Mortgage Free in 5 to 7 years. So what you do is you open a home equity line of credit, or what's called a HELOC, which is a liquid line against your house. You can take money in, you can take it out, you can write checks on it. It's completely liquid, anytime, any direction, with no penalties involved. You take that out as a second on your house. Let's just say your primary residence for the moment, although it could be your investment property too. And you kind of feed the first from the second and end up paying your principal down much, much faster on that HELOC. Okay, so I'm going to give you an oversimplified example of how this might work, which might help. So say you had $300,000 house and you have a $200,000 first at 4%. You got a good rate. You go out and take a HELOC for maybe $50,000, right? You have plenty of equity. So you have a $50,000 HELOC, which is just brand new. You haven't used it yet, and a $200,000 first. You would write a check on the HELOC for $50,000 towards the first. So you've just paid your principal down. You now owe $150 instead of $200, and you now owe $50 on your HELOC, right? You use the HELOC kind of like your checking account. You keep your income, which is normally sitting in your checking account doing nothing, in the HELOC, pushing down your principal every day. HELOCs are based on what's called average daily balance. How much do you owe today? So you're making progress against your principal every day, okay? And the best of all worlds is you have all of your bills, your food bills, your electricity bills, every bill you have on one credit card. Hopefully you'll get some frequent flyer miles as well. And so every day during the month, you're making progress in your principal, except for one day when you pay your bill and the HELOC balance goes up. But every other day you're making progress in your principal because they do average daily balance. So as your principal goes down at an accelerating rate, you owe less principal and therefore you owe less interest. So literally every month, your payment is going down on your HELOC as you pay it off faster, which just kind of blows people away, Mark. That's the way it works. So going back to our example, so over 9 months, a year, however long it say it's 9 months, you pay that $50,000 off by having the money in there. So now the $50,000 is free and clear. So then you do it again. You write another $50,000 check towards your first, which is at $150. So that brings it down to $100. Over the next 9 months, you pay the HELOC off. You do it twice more. Your first is now paid off. You pay off the HELOC, and in 5, 6, 7 years, you are completely mortgage free. That's kind of a vastly oversimplified way of explaining it. And there's a free website that you can actually model it in your own situation, which is truthinequity.com. Truthinequity.com. You go on there, you fill in what's called a personal profile. You put in your income, your expenses, your home value, your mortgage, all these different things. In this case, say, okay, what you're doing today, it's going to take you 28 years to pay off your mortgage. And based on the numbers you just gave us, it'll be 5.6 years, whatever it comes out to be. And then they show you step by step how to do it. So that's a vastly oversimplified way of explaining how mortgage optimization can literally save you 25 years off your mortgage and tens of thousands of dollars of needless interest.
One question I have, when you're doing these figures and figuring out this can be paid off in 5 to 7 years, are you assuming that like all your extra money is going into that mortgage, or are you just assuming that it's the normal payment you would have had otherwise?
All the money you've got, instead of sitting in your checking account, is sitting in your HELOC, pushing that principal down every day. Okay? Because if it's sitting in the checking account, it's doing nothing for you. It's helping the bank, which takes the money and lends it back out. But if it's sitting in the HELOC, it's pushing down your balance every day. So say you had that $50,000 HELOC and you got a paycheck for $1,000. You'd normally keep it sitting in your checking account earning nothing. You put the $1,000 on the HELOC, and now you owe $49,000, right? You just paid the HELOC down by $1,000. So you owe interest on $49 instead of $50, right? Which can be a little bit less.
Gotcha.
So all the income you've got coming in is going to be pushing that principal down on a continual basis. There are 3 things, Mark, you need to make the strategy work. The first one, got to have equity in your house. If you're underwater, there's nothing to borrow against, so you can't do it. Second thing, got to have a decent credit score, maybe 680 or higher, something like that. And the third thing, you got to have positive cash flow. More money coming in than going out during the month. The more positive cash flow you have, the faster the mortgage gets paid off. I bet the vast majority of your listeners have those three things, and therefore they can use mortgage optimization to literally save themselves tens of thousands of dollars in interest that they're paying needlessly.
Right. No, I understand. I understand that. One thing I think you're kind of assuming they aren't investing in anything else at that point then, right?
Well, let's do this on an investment property. Okay, so you do the same thing. You take your tenant's rent and you put it into the HELOC on the investment property. So your tenants are paying your investment property off much faster than would be otherwise if you kept the rent sitting in a checking account earning nothing, right? So
right.
It can be used on investment property just as well as it can be on your primary residence.
Okay. Nope, that makes sense. And one thing the thing that I don't know if I say disagree with you on, but I understand the concept of the whole HELOC and everything, is that I personally would love to use that money actually buying more properties or investing in something else instead of paying off my 4% mortgage. That's my personal preference.
I'm just giving people options. And you're also comparing a certainty with an uncertainty. If you use this technique, you're certain when you're going to pay your mortgage off. If you buy another property, hopefully it's going to work out well, and hopefully it'll appreciate and do all kinds of wonderful things. But if it doesn't, it doesn't work that way. So people say, oh, well, I'll take the money and invest in the stock market, which is doing great. Well, it is until it isn't. So I don't like to confuse what's certain with what's uncertain. This is a system that if you follow it exactly, you are certain as to when you're going to pay your mortgage off. What happens with another property is uncertain. Hopefully good, but uncertain.
Okay, I have a question that you may not be able to answer, but I'm very curious about. Have you ever compared doing this strategy versus taking all your extra money and investing it in the secured real estate funds at 8%?
Well, you can combine those two. I mean, if you have extra money and it's earning 8% in the secured real estate fund, that may be a better way than paying off your mortgage faster at 4%. I mean, it gives you another option. That's a better way of doing it. What a lot of people do is they keep their extra money in the checking account earning zero, right? That's what really helps you. Now, a lot of people probably before didn't even know the secured real estate funds existed, pay 8%. One of the things that they do at this truthandequity.com is they look at various options and kind of customize it based on your situation. In some cases, it might make sense to pay the mortgage off more slowly if the money you would have put into that is being used to make more money for you. For some people, that's not good. Some people just want to pay their mortgages off faster. Can you imagine a 30-year-old couple who have their primary mortgage paid off by 35 instead of 60, right? And then they can spend the next 25 years investing and being mortgage free. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it's giving you an option that most people don't even know exists. And believe me, banks do not want you to know about this, right? Yeah. You go to a banker and say, I'd like to do mortgage equity optimization. He will have no clue what you're talking about. And frankly, he's not interested in finding out about it because he wants to pay that mortgage off as slowly as possible because that's where the banks make all their money on that upfront interest.
Right. Yep. And I'm not trying to give you a hard time. In fact, I agree that the vast majority of people, if given the option, they say they would invest it in something else, but they probably won't. They'll probably spend it.
Exactly.
And I think I have some stats from an article I wrote that 80% of people's net worth when they're 60 years old is in their house. It's crazy. And then I see all these articles about how you should be renting instead of buying. But the facts really do say, your house is your best investment because it almost is a forced saving plan for people.
But imagine what a difference it would have made if those people who were in their 60s had paid their mortgage off when they were in their 30s instead of paying all that interest for 30 years, right? They would have owned outright, and the extra income that would have gone to the mortgage could be invested in stocks and mutual funds and real estate and other things. So they'd be far, far better off having their mortgage paid off sooner and investing the difference in other ways. So by the time they get to retirement, they have a decent nest egg. Lots and lots of people are getting to retirement with nothing close to a decent nest egg or nothing, and still having mortgages left over as well. So it's a tool I just want people to be aware of. And it may or may not be right for you, but it's a tool most people don't even know exists.
No, it makes sense. And I thought one thing I asked you too before we started this podcast, we were chatting for a little bit while my computer restarted, which had some problems. But the tax laws do affect this.
Yes.
And so how can you explain that a little bit about how the new tax laws would affect HELOCs?
So HELOC interest had always been tax deductible, but part of the tax law that passed at the end of 2017 meant that interest on home equity lines of credit is no longer deductible. So it's going to make it a little bit more expensive to do this strategy and a little bit less attractive, but it was never about deductions anyway. What it's about is paying your principal off faster. See, what banks, they have you asking the wrong question. They have you asking, what's the rate and what's the payment on a mortgage? The real question you want to ask, they don't want to answer is, how fast do I pay off my principal? So when you're at a closing and they're going to give you an amortization table somewhere in the deep piles of paper that you're signing, it's going to show you month by month how slowly you're paying off your principal and how much interest you're paying. People don't even look at it. They just want to get the keys to the house. But it's right there in black and white. You're paying off your interest, your principal very, very, very slowly. So even though it's not deductible, I'd still rather pay my mortgage off quicker and have my money working for me all the way instead of having it working for the bank.
Right. And then we also talked too that with the new rules, the standard deduction doubled. So I think the estimates are almost 90% of people won't even take interest deductions anymore because of that. So
Correct.
It probably won't affect most people anyway with the new tax laws.
That's correct. The standard deduction went from $12,000 to $24,000 for the average family, meaning they're not going to get deductions for anything. Mortgage interest, charitable contributions, health expenses, student loan interest, no deductions at all. So you're correct. In that case, it's not going to affect them anyway.
Very cool. No, it's a very interesting strategy. And to be honest, when I first saw the advertisement on YouTube, I'm like, oh, what is this scam? And then I listened to it. I'm like, oh, there's actually something to it. So it makes sense.
Right. If you do it right. I mean, there have been some scammy people in this field. I'll mention there was a company called United First Financial, UFirst, that was selling this idea as a multi-level marketing scheme. And basically they were selling software for like $3,500. And they said, here, you take the software and you figure it out. And people couldn't figure it out, and that was a scam. But the people I'm talking about, Truth and Equity, have been doing this for a long, long, long time. And they're customized for your specific situation. It's not as though it's cookie cutter, everything's the same for everybody. You have to look at the numbers and see what's best in your particular situation. So if you do it right, and this is being done around the world, Mark, in Australia, in Hong Kong, in Canada, other places, it's just not as common here because the banks resist. Banks love the current situation where they earn all this interest for many, many years.
Right. No, that's great. Awesome. Well, Jordan, there's one more thing I want to talk to you about. The Heroes program. I had never heard of this. Well, I kind of had it through HUD. They have, you can buy a house for 50% through HUD if you're an EMT firefighter, but It's called the Good Neighbor Next Door. Can you talk about the Hero program and what that is?
So this is a program called Heroes Come First. And a hero is defined as a doctor, a dentist, current military, veterans, retired military, police, fire, first responders, EMTs, clergy. There's all kinds of different people who are basically in the kind of serving professions. And it's nice to say thank you for your service, but this is actually giving them money back in their pockets in a way that they really going to be benefited by. So what they do is they get significant discounts on mortgages, fewer points, lower interest rates, all kinds of discounts on mortgage rates and all the fees involved in closing costs. And they get a rebate of a portion of the realtor's commissions when they're buying a home or when they're selling a home, either way. These can add up to $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 depending on the situation and save people a ton of money if they're heroes. Now, people are heroes, they don't realize they're heroes or know how to be recognized for it. To find out more about this particular program, go to heroescomefirst.com. That's the website. And their phone number is 800-272-5626. It's part of a nationwide program kind of started after 9/11. When there's a fire or a bomb or something, all of us are running out of the building. These are the people who are running into the building, right? So it's nice to give them a bit of a break. And there you go with the Heroes Come First program.
How does that work exactly with the real estate agents? Are the real estate agents giving up part of their commission or is it, how's that work?
So going into the program, the realty companies have agreed that if somebody qualifies as a hero, they're willing to give up maybe 0.5% of, if they're getting 3%, maybe they'll give up, half of the 3, if it's 3, they'll give up half of the percent, if you see what I mean, so they end up getting 2.5%, something like that. So yeah, they're everybody's kind of on board and recognizing the service that these heroes do. And it's nice to give them an actual monetary benefit as well as just saying thanks.
Okay, very cool. Coming on another perspective of this, if real estate agents want to join this program, is there anything special they have to do to sign up?
I would do that going to heroescomefirst.com. It's probably not going to be an individual agent. It's probably going to be their brokerage that's going to sign up as a company and offer to anybody who buys. And from their point of view, they're going to attract heroes to do their transactions, buying or selling through them, as opposed to somebody else who isn't. So it's a way of getting listings as well.
Right. And our audience has a lot of real estate agents as well as investors. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, you want to differentiate yourself from other realtors. And if you're willing to give back a little bit of your commission, maybe they'll list with you instead of other agents. So yeah, it can give them a little bit of a break.
Awesome. Well, Jordan, I think those are all the questions I had. All I wanted to talk about. Any major like you have to do this, things that we missed, whether it's real estate or just money in general that you want to share with people?
Let me just mention one other area that in real estate that people may not be aware of. A lot of people's real estate payments are wrong, and they don't know it's wrong. They've been overpaying for years. This is on adjust-for-rate mortgages, this is on escrow accounts, and this is on private mortgage insurance premiums. So on adjust-for-rate mortgage, it's going up and down based on the movement of interest rates. And these mortgages today are sold from one servicer to another, to another, and to another. And in many, many cases, they make mistakes, and you don't even know you've been overpaying. So if you get this audited, and the website to do that is verifymymortgage.com. If you get it audited, they'll say, you've overpaid by $8,000. You get a refund, and then they'll adjust your payment correctly. They get your original note, see what your history of payments has been, what it should have been, and in like 50% of the cases, they find people are overpaying on their mortgages. So that's the mortgage part. The next one is escrows. So many banks are over withholding on escrow for property taxes and insurance. They assume property taxes are going to be higher than they are. They assume insurance premiums are going to be higher than they are. So they're over escrowing. And again, you can get a rebate and adjust your escrow back to a more realistic level. A website for that is verifymyescrow.com. And the final one is the plague of real estate people, private mortgage insurance, PMI. This is what insures the lender if you have less than 20% equity in a house. I hate paying premiums when I'm not even being insured. I'm insuring the lender, right? So people don't realize that they are overpaying on PMI very frequently. If the value of their home goes over 20% equity, they're supposed to get rid of the PMI, and the PMI company is never going to tell you about that. So say, for example, you did an addition or did an improvement on the house that would add to its value. Say the values in your neighborhood are going up a lot, as they are in many places. You could very well be over 20% equity without having done a 20% down payment and paying far more, and it can be hundreds of dollars a month in PMI that you don't really need to be. So a website for that is verifymypmi.com. The phone number for all those three verifies, it's a verification company, is 800-888-6781. And it burns me up a lot that people are paying too much on their mortgages, escrows, and PMIs, and here's a place that can verify it and get you a refund and get your payments correct.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's something I've never checked myself. You always just kind of assume the bank does it right. I was an REO agent, listed a lot of foreclosures for banks, and going through that side of it, you realize that the banks are so gigantic and huge, half the time they have no idea what's going on with their loans. So
you're paying the price for it, right? You're paying more PMI than you should be. You're being over escrowed, and your mortgage payment is wrong. And you're right. People just say, "Oh, the bank, it's a bank." What could go wrong? Lots can go wrong. So yes, I agree with you. So it's an independent place. They kind of take a look at it. If everything's right, they'll tell you that. But at least you know if you've been overpaying or not. And they then, if they have been overcharging you, they give you a detailed letter saying, here's what you should have paid, here's what you did pay, here's the amount you've overpaid, here's what your new payment should be. And banks would normally accept that. And I've just saved your listeners thousands of dollars in overpayments on their mortgages.
Right. I may have to check that myself.
Great.
Awesome. Well, Jordan, great job on the show today. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot myself. If people want to reach you directly, I know you've got your own podcast. What's the best way for them to learn more about you?
And my show is called The Money Answers Show. It's on weekly on what's called the Voice America Business Network. But the way to reach me is moneyanswers.com. And I've got loads of resources and videos and links of all types there. My books, I talked about Master Your Debt, for example. And they can write me emails. And I'd be glad to get emails from your listeners at moneyanswers.com.
Awesome. All right. Anything else you want to leave us with before we head out of here?
We gave them 8% on their money with the secured funds. We helped them pay their mortgages off in 5 years instead of 30 years with mortgage optimization. We helped heroes get big breaks on their mortgages and buying and selling homes. And we verified their real estate payments. So I don't want to overwhelm them with too much stuff.
No, I think that was awesome. No, thank you again for being on. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I am serious when I learned quite a bit from you about various programs I wasn't aware of. And thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll have to keep in touch and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.